Good morning, everybody. Mike's MMA Picks with your Fight Morning Quick Guard Breakdown show for UFC Vegas 42. This show is being brought to you by MMA Oddsbreaker as well as BetDSI. So we're back at the Apex. We have Yair-Rodriguez coming in after a 2-year layoff, taking on a surging Max Holloway after a dominant win over Calvin Kattar. 11 fights on the docket. As previously mentioned, this fight does take place inside of the octagon at the Apex. So we're going to see a lot of action forced, less space to work. And we kick things off with Kennedy Nzechukwu taking on Yadong-Arce. This fight takes place at 205 pounds. We have Kennedy Nzechukwu fighting out of Fortis MMA, minus 110. Fighter, 7,900 in DraftKings. Now, Nzechukwu, you watch the tape, still extremely raw fighter. Talented, yes, though extremely raw. One of these few fighters where he relies on his corner to tell him what to do throughout the entirety of the fight. Disturbing to watch this play out, where you watch the Danilo fight, the Paul Craig fight, and others. The wheels, they just don't seem to be there up here. And I have concerns as he's taking on Yadong-Arce, a South Korean fighter, striker by trade, who took William Knight down numerous times. I'm not that impressed with Jung's wrestling game because it took one technique multiple times to put Knight in a bad spot that he really, it appeared that Knight wasn't training how to escape. What I am impressed with from Jung is his striking acumen, his ability to close distance. Nzechukwu will have a significant reach advantage here. This fight is expected to go to a decision at minus 135. I like the fluidity from Jung. The problem with Jung is when he gets struck, you saw it in the Alves fight, he is worried about the power that's coming back at him. And Nzechukwu does have some power. We saw in the Ulberg fight. I mean, look at the fight IQ there on display. Incredibly poor fight IQ from Nzechukwu. This fight is a toss-up. I'm going to be picking Yadong-Arce. He just seems like the more well put together fighter who's not going to be looking to his corner every second for professional advice when all of that should have been taken care of in the training camp. It's a disturbing trend of events to watch that unfold. So give me Yadong-Arce in that spot. Next up, where we have Rothwell-De Lima, who has been a bit of a weight bully coming up from 145 pounds. We saw him take on Damir Ismagulov and hold his own for the majority of that fight, though. This is a very explosive fighter, Rothwell-De Lima, taking on Mark Diakiese. Mark Diakiese, I faded him in past fights, namely against Nasrat Haqparast. That was a few years ago. I remember the Frankie Perez fight, and Diakiese has developed over the years now, training at All Stars. Alves coming in with a 19-10 overall record. You look at the amount of times he's been finished. That is something to look out for, though. This fight is expected to go to a decision at minus 150. You have Diakiese coming in with a 14-4 overall record, minus 215 at the betting window, 8,700 in DraftKings. I do see this fight taking place at range for the most part. You look at Diakiese, he has a bit of a reach advantage here. He was in there with Rafael Fiziev in this last fight, and tough as nails, man. Diakiese can hang with some tough fighters, was in there with Lando Venata and got the better of Venata. Alves, this is one of those cases where you have a dangerous fighter early in Alves. The unpredictability of Alves could put Diakiese in trouble before he's able to get his timing down. I'll be picking Diakiese in this spot. Alves, though, is potentially live. The explosiveness, the guillotine. He does have a ground game, Alves, and Diakiese is going to look to keep this on the feet. Give me Mark Diakiese in that spot. Next up, third fight of the night, where we have Courtney Casey taking on Nzechukwu-Jung, who missed weight, came in at almost 129 pounds. Courtney Casey, I do not trust Courtney Casey putting it out there right now. 9-9 overall record. This is a fighter who came out of Texas and was a former collegiate soccer player. Is looking to stay at range here. This is somebody who has been in there with Jillian Robertson, was submitted rather quickly in that spot, has been in there with JJ Aldrich, Mara Barella, Cynthia Calvillo was unable to take Courtney Casey down. I look back and we'll talk about that fight in a few minutes. I don't have much faith in Courtney Casey. I heard that she got back to the MMA lab, and in this spot, Nzechukwu-Jung, we know that there's one thing that she's good at, and that is submissions. When she's able to get the fight to the mat, she's at a tremendous reach disadvantage here. Jojua coming in overweight, she could potentially use that to her advantage if she's able to get to put Casey on her back. I could see Jojua locking up an armbar. We know that is a path to victory for her here. You look at the price tag, minus 270 for Courtney Casey. I think that is ridiculous. I would not be willing to pay that. Plus 215 for Jojua, 7,400. You look at Jojua, though, she looked like she's wanted out of fights in the past. The Miranda Maverick fight, that was a little disturbing. I do not have faith in either fighter in this specific bout, though push comes to shove. I think the experience of Courtney Casey, if she's able to keep this fight at range, that's where she could potentially have success. So give me Courtney Casey, though. That is a pick that's done with very, very little conviction. Next up, where we have Sean Woodson taking on Colin-Anglin. Anglin is a threat on the feet if he's able to close distance. Now, we are inside of the smaller octagon. He's taking on Sean Woodson. Sean Woodson is a freak at 6'2", 145 pounds. Uses his length well. You can't say that for a lot of UFC fighters. A lot of UFC fighters out there fail to use their reach. And Woodson is one of the guys who can do that. You watch the Bakniak fight. There have been others, Yusuf Zalal, where he uses his reach well and his length well, coming in at minus 325. Now, Arosa was able to have success, kind of expose Sean Woodson in his in that fight. 9,200 in DraftKings for Woodson. Now, how does he pay off that price tag? He's going to have to smoke Anglin out of there. He could potentially catch Anglin coming in. Anglin, tough dude, 8-2 overall record. Got a bit of a raw deal in his last fight out, where he took on a striker who, Bagdasaryan, he didn't look great in his recent UFC fight, but we know what he can do. $7,000. Anglin is one of those underdogs that you want to take another look at because he does have wrestling. Woodson can be taken down. Woodson's going to have to pepper Anglin and really make him pay while he tries to close distance. 8-2 overall record for Anglin here. He hasn't taken a tremendous amount of damage in his professional career. Does have some power. If he's able to close the distance on Woodson, he could become live here. I'll be picking Woodson in this spot, though I don't hate on people who are trying to search for underdogs here because they are few and far between on this specific card as far as I'm concerned. I'll be picking Woodson in that matchup. Now, We move to a fight where you look at the smaller octagon, you look at somebody who hasn't had a lot of success closing distance. That would be Cynthia Calvillo. She, her footwork hasn't necessarily been there, but if she's able to find a dominant position, if she's able to get on top or find the back of opponents, she's had incredible success. Now she's taking on an Andrea Lee in this spot who has struggled against grapplers, has struggled in the takedown defense department, isn't necessarily the strongest fighter physically, though if a fight plays out on the feet, this is a spot where she does have a reach advantage. Cynthia Calvillo should come out here and force the action. You watch her last bout against Jessica Andrade, it blew my mind that folks were lining up to roster and to go to the betting window in favor of Cynthia Calvillo against Jessica Andrade. She was blown out of the water in that spot. She's taking this fight on short notice here against Andrea Lee, who in my eyes, it's going to come down to the grappling. It's going to come down to the fight IQ. And Cynthia Calvillo, we haven't necessarily trusted her to fight to the best of her abilities against Katlyn Chookagian, against Courtney Casey. There have been others. This fight, though, is in a smaller octagon. And from my vantage point, I see a fighter in Cynthia Calvillo who has her back up against the wall. You watch the Jessica I fight. That fight wasn't necessarily an anomaly because she was able to go deep into that fight and have sustained success. We've seen her have sustained success against Marina Rodriguez. That, granted, that was down a weight class. In this spot, this may surprise some folks, but I'll be picking Cynthia Calvillo. I think that she does have what it takes to cause Andrea Lee some problems. She's going to have to be very aggressive and be a mad dog in there. Montana De La Rosa was able to have sustained success against Andrea Lee, and I think that Cynthia Calvillo could do that. And I'll be picking Cynthia Calvillo in that spot. Let's take a look at some of the comments here, friends. Good morning, Jack. Welcome. Jack's got his money on Max Holloway at he's a minus 700 favorite at this spot. I hope he comes through for you. Okay. Yep. That same trip. You don't think it's going to work on Kennedy? Yeah. If I was in Fortis's camp, that would be one thing I would take a look at. You see somebody have the same technique over and over again. Saif teaches boxing. Okay. All right, let's see what's happening here. Excellent. We've got a lot of folks checking in this morning, and we are going to come to the next fight where we have Thiago Moises taking on Joel Alvarez, the phenom. Joel Alvarez, who in my eyes is a welterweight. This is a guy who's missed weight multiple times at 155 pounds, 6'3" tall, and he's got some density. He's pretty thick and has a muscular, vascular frame where I don't think he's going to be able to make lightweight ever again, to be honest. Thiago Moises coming in with 15-5 overall record. What may surprise some folks is Thiago Moises, for that matter. Thiago Moises is still only 26 years of age with his 15-5 overall record. Has a mix of knockouts and submissions and some decisions to his credit, though. If you've paid close attention, this is somebody who debuted against Benny Dariush and was known as a grappler, was known as a Brazilian jiu-jitsu ace. $9,000 in DraftKings. I think this fight's going to hit the mat, and it will hit the mat rather quickly. Minus 250 at the betting window for Thiago Moises. Joel Alvarez coming in with an 18-2 overall record. He has 16 submission victories to his credit. Joel Alvarez is going to welcome Thiago Moises to his world. He does not mind getting taken down. It wouldn't surprise me to see him try and pull guard here and hunt for that guillotine. Thiago Moises will have no problems accepting the fight on the mat. But I will say this, Joel Alvarez, with that extra weight, with those long limbs, could pose Thiago Moises some problems here. And I think something to take a look at here is that this fight doesn't go the distance. There's a plus number on it right now. There's only 3 fights that are scheduled, 3 fights that are favored to end inside the distance on this entire card. And this is one of them that I'm looking at. And I wonder, this fight takes place in the smaller octagon. There's going to be less place for Alvarez to move those long limbs on the feet. Thiago Moises does have heavy striking. You watch the Alexander Hernandez bout. Very impressive. Took over that fight late. You could see the power being a huge difference maker. You got to wonder how much that weight cut took out of Joel Alvarez. Missing weight and knowing that he missed weight back to back, this guy had to have pushed himself. The problem is, though, he came in about 15 or so minutes into the weigh-ins, and he didn't take the full amount of time. So I question what was going on behind the scenes in that spot. Though Thiago Moises is a competent grappler, Joel Alvarez, as I mentioned, is going to welcome Thiago Moises into his world. I think somebody's getting finished. Take a look at the submission props here. I believe we had around plus 800 or so for Alvarez, and it's worth a look at Moises as well. So I'll be picking Thiago Moises, but this fight, seeing Alvarez come in overweight again, I think that somebody is going to get finished here. Next up, where we have Song Yadong taking on Julio-Arce. I was dug into this fight early in the week, and this fight takes place at bantamweight, one of my favorite fights on the card. 17-5-1 overall record. I really like what Team Alpha Male has done to harness and mold Song Yadong, develop him. You watch a teachable moment, an opportunity that was a character building experience against Cody Stamann, where he was taken down and controlled. You also watch the Kyler Phillips fight, where he was hit with some strikes, that head kick that landed. My goodness, how he was able to take that and keep on ticking. Julio-Arce, great fighter in his own right, dropping down from 145 pounds, coming off of a win over Andre Ewell. This isn't Andre Ewell, though, that he's taking on. Arce coming in with a reach advantage here, is not going to be the stronger fighter. One thing I want everybody to pay attention to during this fight is Julio-Arce has a tendency to bleed in many of his fights. He has a cut that usually opens up right around the corner of his eyebrow and the crease near his eye. That's something that has opened up a couple of months ago as well. I think that we're going to see Julio-Arce get split open here. Arce is the more well-rounded striker. Song Yadong is a power puncher, though has volume and also has cardio. Both of these fighters have cardio. I think this fight is going to play out. The deeper it goes, Song Yadong has really worked on his get-up game. He bounces right back up to his feet. He's going to have Uriah Faber in his corner. Julio-Arce, Tiger Schulman product, who spent a lot of time with Shane Burgos in the lead up to this camp. I think it's going to be a firefight for the most part. If this fight does hit the mat, I think that we're going to see Song Yadong work his way back to his feet. I don't think Arce is going to be the stronger fighter in this spot. And the longer this fight goes, I think that the optics are going to come into play. Song Yadong is going to be landing the much heavier strikes. Arce is going to be looking to land those straight punches. Arce should be bleeding like a stuck pig all over the canvas. And I think that we're going to see Song Yadong walk away with a victory in this spot. And it may be unanimous, but it wouldn't surprise me to see a split. Both of these fighters have gone to split decisions in the past, but I think that the more likely outcome is that we see Song Yadong walk away with a victory. Next up, where we have Miguel Baeza taking on Casey-Jojua. This is a fight where I think we're going to see this fight end inside the distance. I think that's something to take a look at. The minus 160s or so. Miguel Baeza, you look at his record, 10-1, suffered a loss to Ponzinibbio last time out, was taught a bit of a lesson the longer that fight went. Baeza does not move his head very well. 29 years of age, was caught by Matt Brown multiple times. An ancient Matt Brown, minus 140 at the betting window, 8,500. I do see this being a closely lined fight for a reason. 29 years of age, 27 years old for Casey-Jojua, coming off of a fight against Matt Semmelsberger, where Semmelsberger is actually a pretty good fighter, and gave him a run for his money. Also, the Michel Pereira fight, that was a fight where we got to see Casey-Jojua showcase some of his abilities. I was on Michel Pereira in that spot. We saw it was a close fight, but Pereira deservedly walked away with victory there. Plus 110 underdog for Casey-Jojua, 7,700 in DraftKings. Now, Casey-Jojua could come out here and land the knockout blow at any point. His power does carry deep into fights. Baeza has shown a propensity to get caught. And another thing to watch out for is look out for Baeza by submission. He does have a legitimate ground game. We don't get to see it that often because he likes to trade on the feet. But if he has the MMA Masters team in his ear, they should have him come in here, look to land a takedown, do whatever it takes to get this fight to the mat, and then lock up a submission on Casey-Jojua. But that might be a little bit more difficult than just saying that he's going to have to work for it. He's going to have to close distance. And Casey-Jojua does have legitimate power. So I think the better play in this spot is to look out for this fight not going the distance, though my pick will be Miguel Baeza. Next up, where we have women's featherweight bout. I believe there are only 5 or so fighters in this entire division. It blows my mind that this division still exists. I think that we should see more men's flyweight fights, and they can do away with this division altogether. It doesn't need to be there. Felicia Spencer is coming in as a significant favorite here, minus 310, 9,100 in DraftKings, taking on Leah Letson, who hasn't fought in a few years. 5-1 overall record, plus 240 underdog, 7,100 in DraftKings. Take a look at the Felicia Spencer inside the distance prop. It comes down to who establishes top position here. I don't think either fighter is going to be able to work their way back to the feet. Letson is a tough gal, but let's be real here. Look at 5-1 overall record. Both of these fighters, Felicia Spencer only has 11 fights on her resume. Why are we here? Why is this fight even taking place? Let's be serious. This fight's expected to go to a decision at minus 190. I do think that if this fight does have a fighter exhibiting control on the top, that they could potentially lock up a submission here. And I think that fighter would be Felicia Spencer. So I'll be picking Felicia Spencer. I wish we would see more men's flyweight fights and less women's featherweight fights. And Aspen Ladd, it wouldn't surprise me to see Aspen Ladd at 155 pounds of PFL soon, if that still exists. Let's see. All right. Yes. Alvarez missed weight though, and we all know most weight missers end up scoring the win. That is true to some extent, but you got to wonder how much the weight miss took out of Joel Alvarez, the MAF garage. Good morning. Good morning. All right, let's keep going here. Let's keep moving up this card where we head to the co-main event of the evening, where we have Ben Rothwell taking on Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Marcos Rogerio de Lima, 36 years of age. Ben Rothwell, 40 years of age. So neither of these fighters are spring chickens. We have seen, you want to roster fighters who fight for your money. We've seen Marcos Rogerio de Lima come out here guns blazing for about 5 to 7 or so minutes, and then the wheels fall off. So many times we've seen it happen. He's mentally checked out. I've rostered him, and he's won me some money in the past, but we've also made some money fading him in previous fights. Coming off of a win over Maurice Green, who quite possibly the worst fighter in the UFC. 18-7-1 record for Marcos Rogerio de Lima, plus 140. Underdog, 7,600 in DraftKings. This is one of those cases where I honestly, if you're going out of your way to play Marcos Rogerio de Lima, I think that there are some really, I'm trying to think of the polite way to put this. There's some issues happening if you're going out of your way to play Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Ben Rothwell, I realize that he's lost a foot. He's lost a step. He is 40 years of age. He is a fighter who is coming to the end of his road. He doesn't have his PEDs. He's a minus 170 favorite. This is a fight where I believe is a pass in many respects. You don't have to go out of your way to put money on every single fight. Minus 170 betting favorite, 8,600 in DraftKings. We've seen, I was in the building when Barnett was able to, was submitted by Ben Rothwell. And we know that is part of his arsenal. We don't get to see it that often. How does this fight hit the mat? It could hit the mat for a number of different reasons. Mainly, Marcos Rogerio de Lima may topple to his feet topple to his back at any moment. Rothwell will likely be eating leg kicks early. Marcos Rogerio de Lima will likely have some early success. He comes from a great camp, which blows my mind too. How Marcos Rogerio de Lima has been able to stick with ATT after so many situations where the wheels have completely fallen off in fights. I think that's going to happen again here to Rothwell. I mean, to Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I think that the wheels are going to fall off the longer this fight goes. Rothwell has a propensity to survive, to be there in the latter portions of the fight. You watch the Stefan Struve fight. Granted, there were some groin strikes in that bout. It becomes a war of attrition, and he's able to survive. Look at the record for Ben Rothwell, 39-13. Are folks expecting Ben Rothwell to completely get his legs chopped off while this fight takes place? I have questions about those on Marcos Rogerio de Lima in this spot. Now, Marcos Rogerio de Lima may come out here and take Rothwell out of there. That's always a possibility. This is one of those situations where there are no certainties in this game. But if you want to plant your flag here, might be a dangerous spot to do that. I'll be picking Ben Rothwell. But Marcos Rogerio de Lima, I mean, there are better spots on this card than going after an underdog like that. Give me Ben Rothwell. And I think that there's the potential for Ben Rothwell to end this fight via stoppage. Before we get to the main event, let's take a look. Ha 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 ha. All right, here we go. Hit me up with your least stressful parlay. There are no certainties in this game. Not a massive fan of parlaying fights. I think you are better off searching for the straight money lines. But every capper has their strengths, right? And there are many different ways to skin a cat. You look up and down the betmma.tips landscape, and you see that there are a lot of folks out there who have had success playing props and also parlaying. I'm more of a guy who has stuck to money line. Main event of the evening, Max Holloway taking on Yair Rodriguez. This fight has been a long time in the making. You have a 22-6 Max Holloway, and look at his resume. He's fought some incredible fighters. A lot of people refer to him as the GOAT, but there is a fighter out there, Alex Volkanovski, who deserves the respect. He has the belt. Amazing fighter, Volkanovski. And one of the great things about Volkanovski is he is able to execute supreme game plans. And he may not be the best fighter, but he is a fighter who can implement a tremendous game plan. I liken Volkanovski to Rose Namajunas in that she may not be the best fighter, but she's able to execute tremendous game plans. So Yair Rodriguez, a couple of years away from the sport, was popped by USADA. USADA wasn't able to get a hold of him. So he was suspended, and he's coming back inside of the smaller octagon. This is something that needs to be mentioned to many folks out there, that this fight is taking in place in the smaller octagon. Yair Rodriguez, 13-2 overall record, plus 450 underdog. I don't like that. I don't like the price on Holloway here at minus 700. But for 9,500 in DraftKings, we've seen Volkanovski break the scoring meter in DraftKings. He is able to put on a tremendous avalanche of strikes. And you watch the Ortega fight. There have been many others throughout the course of history. Anthony Pettis, Jose Aldo, 2 separate times where the fight hits the third round and Holloway just starts to open up and is a machine out there. Rodriguez has a kicking game, but the thing about Yair Rodriguez, a lot of folks need to pay attention to this, that he needs to create space to implement his kicking game. He's not one of these fighters who's able to kick inside of a phone booth. And the octagon inside of the Apex is a phone booth. So in my eyes, Rodriguez may have some success in the first few minutes of the fight. That's when he's going to be most dangerous. Though the longer this fight goes, we should see Max Holloway start to chip away, start to find his range. And something to be aware of, though, Max Holloway has absorbed the second most significant head strikes in UFC history. That is a stat that you do not want to hold. And that is something that, how long can he keep this up before the wheels start to fall off? We saw it happen against Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar last time out against Marlon Chito Vera, the cracks started to show up, and Frankie is, unfortunately, it appears his career is over. But in this spot, Max Holloway, I expect him to turn up in the third, fourth, possibly even the fifth round if it gets there, and really put it on Yair Rodriguez. There's a situation here where we saw Yair Rodriguez in the third round against Jeremy Stephens on his back, starting to look winded. And if that fight was a fourth or fifth round, Jeremy Stephens, we may be looking at a totally different situation here. Now this fight is scheduled for 5 rounds. Does Yair Rodriguez have the gas to go? We saw him go against Korean Zombie, but that's a different fight. Max Holloway, the volume that he puts on is incredible. And that is something that we really need to consider. So I'll be picking Max Holloway in this spot. I think that I wouldn't feel comfortable laying, minus 700. I think that he does get this done inside the distance. So take a look at those round props, 3, 4, 5. Get anywhere from plus 900 all the way to plus 1,500 or so. Worth a look. want to thank everybody for tuning in this morning. Remember, you want to pay attention out there to long-term track winners. There are a lot of folks who are in the landscape here who are third-party tracked losers. And just be aware that you got to do your homework. This is valuable airtime, and you don't want to waste your time. You want to follow and tail third-party tracked winners. There are no certainties in this game. Some folks say you're only as good as your last card, but really, you need to take a look at the long-term sample size. Minimize risk, maximize profit. One step at a time. Chip away every single card. Pick your spots. Want to wish everybody a tremendous day. Let's do this. Go get what's yours, my friends.